Evan Closky joins in on the wide receiver conversation, talking about Chris Godwin's potential return or departure and what free agent receivers the Bucs should be looking towards. Then we're going to transition and dive in to the tight end conversation and the futures of OJ Howard and Rob Gronkowski. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bucs Nation, and welcome to the Locked On Bucs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, hosted by me, James Yarko, and joined, as I always am, on Wednesdays by my buddy Evan Closky of 10 Tampa Bay. You can check out everything I'm writing about the Buccaneers over at BucsNation.com. We are free and available on all platforms, and we thank you for making this show your first listen or watch every day. And when we're not here, you can find us on Twitter at JYarko_Bucks, at ECloskyWTSP, my usual co-host David Harrison at DHarrison82, and of course the show at Locked On Bucs. Evan, we almost got hit with the Tuesday curse, but we've made it through, and of course we have this show brought to you by our friends over at Get Upside. Just download the free Get Upside app, use promo code touchdown to get 25 cents per gallon or more cash back on your first tank. We're here, we're recording, it's very late, but we have important things to discuss.
I ain't tired.
That's right. And David and I have been discussing this now for 2 days. So now we're going to get your thoughts, weighing in on the wide receiver conversation surrounding the Buccaneers. Of course, you have Brashad Perryman that's about to be a free agent. You have John Brown, who's about to be a free agent. But the big prize that they want to go for, they want to keep in-house, they don't want to hit that open market, is Chris Godwin. Now, obviously, who the quarterback is, David and I both believe will play a very large role in whether or not Chris Godwin returns. If it's, a Blaine Gabbert or a Kyle Trask, yeah, the Buccaneers could afford him, but he could probably get some major money in a place like Philadelphia, Jacksonville. He could go to Denver, team up with Aaron Rodgers out there. He'll have some options. The Los Angeles Chargers, Mike Williams is a free agent. He could go team up with Keenan Allen and a young stud and Justin Herbert. There are options out there for him. Ultimately, when you take a look at Chris Godwin's situation, what are your thoughts on his potential return? What's going to weigh into that? Do you think he's back? Do you think he leaves? What's your take on number 14, maybe going back to number 12, whatever the case may be?
Yeah, personally, I don't know if the quarterback necessarily makes a big difference. I mean, Mike Evans has been here forever, right? And his quarterback situation was not great for a long time, and then stumbled into Tom Brady. But the fact of the matter is, if Chris Godwin can get paid by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he'll stay. We've heard time and time again, he loves this area. He loves this team. This is the team that brought him in. He's got a lot of teammates who are going to be around for a good chunk of time. While we thought this was going to be some massive turnover because we thought all these coaches were going to leave and it was going to be a ripple effect of what happened with Brady. Now Byron and Bowles are back, and eventually they are going to leave because they're really good at their jobs. But if the Buccaneers can make space for him on the salary cap, they're going to do it. And I think they can bring him back. It's just a matter of whether another team out there is going to just completely make an offer that he cannot refuse versus what the Bucs are willing to pay. But I do believe that Godwin would help the Buccaneers out any way that he could to return, as long as there's not this monster discrepancy of what he could make versus what the Bucs are offering. I think there's a hometown discount possible, but when I say discount, I mean I'm talking like very small margins here. Nothing that can bridge a gap of just a monster offer or a multi-million-dollar discrepancy. So that I just want to get that out of the way, because I don't necessarily think that if the quarterback position is not settled in 2022, that doesn't mean it won't be settled in 2023 and we ride again. So So that's on the table. I tend to believe the Buccaneers will make it work. I know how much they love him. I know how vital he is to the success of that offense. If you need any proof, go turn on the tape after the Saints game. And I know no Antonio Brown helped in that problem, but I said this before and I'll say it again. Antonio Brown wouldn't have been as necessary if Chris Godwin wasn't hurt. If you had Godwin and Mike Evans in that game against the Rams, they're a different team. Godwin is the one that torched the Rams when they were in LA. It wasn't a Mike Evans game. And so I think that when you look at a team like Cincinnati and the playmakers they have on offense and how they made their Super Bowl run, you look at the Rams and how they did it with OBJ and Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods to a lesser extent since he's been out most of the year. But it's pretty tough to be successful in this league with just Mike Evans and everybody else. So I think they got to sign Chris Godwin and make him happy and manipulate the money however they got to manipulate it to make it work. But if that means sacrificing some other people along the way, it's tough to imagine that Chris Godwin is a number one on your board of priorities entering the offseason.
Do you think it's enticing at all for Godwin? Because we can talk about how great Chris Godwin is. Our listeners, our viewers know it. Bucs fans have known since he set foot on the field his rookie year. But as good as Chris Godwin is, and despite what the numbers say, especially with Tom Brady over the last 2 years in terms of Godwin's production and his receptions and his targets, that Chris Godwin has been kind of the number one guy. The outside perception is always going to be Godwin is the number 2 to Mike Evans. Do you think it's enticing for a guy like Chris Godwin to be able to go to a Philadelphia and be the guy, or go to Denver and be the guy? He could go to Indianapolis and become the number 1 there, and Michael Pittman then slides to that number 2 spot, and he would serve really well in kind of that complementary role. Is that something you think Chris Godwin would be on the lookout for, or do you think just kind of the duo that neither one of them maybe in their minds are the number 1? They're both just ones together, and they help elevate each other each and every Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, in my view, it's a buffet, baby. Everybody gets to eat. So when it comes to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, if Chris Godwin doesn't get hurt, Godwin was the one this year. He was the one. He was going to have just an astronomical sort of season. He really, really picked up the pace midway through and just was on such a tremendous trajectory, which is why it hurt us so much to watch him go down. But yeah, I don't think that matters, because guess what? To win football games, to win Super Bowls, you need more than one guy. And that's all stuff that we talk about, in front of microphones and stuff. For them, they need the help. To me, it's great to go to a team where I know that Mike Evans is there. You mentioned Philly. Devonta Smith is going to be growing in his role, and he's going to be a thing. Michael Pittman. These are all great players, and no guy can go out there unless your name is like Devontae Adams and in a select few where you have just nobody around you, and you have to work harder to be open. Look at Mike Evans. He gets double teamed all the time, and that helps Chris Godwin, right? That's part of the reason why Godwin's going to get paid. You have to pick your poison, and people tend to allow Godwin to eat versus Mike Evans. And Mike Evans understands that role. He got paid. The Buccaneers know his role. And I think that symbiotic relationship is something that he'd be working for. And again, 1, 2, 3, who cares? Whatever you're going to be making on that paycheck is all that matters to me. And whatever that paycheck says is how I'm valued. So, and if he does return to the Buccaneers, he would be a 1A to Mike Evans's 1A. And I would maybe only say that Godwin is a 1B because he hasn't been here as long as Mike Evans. The only way that I do think it gets a little murky with Chris Godwin returning is if the Buccaneers make a trade for a guy like a Russell Wilson. Then I think manipulating the salary cap becomes almost impossible in that scenario. Not saying that you can't do it, because those guys are geniuses and they can do things that I just can't think of right now. But having said that, I've tinkered around on sites just to see how it would work. And I mean, you would have to clear you would have to clear somebody off the books to make that happen. So in that scenario, I think you would see, let's just say Russell Wilson gets traded here. I would say they let Chris Godwin go, and then they make wide receiver the first pick in their draft, and they make that a priority to immediately inject help into the system.
Yeah, a lot of questions surrounding it. And like I said before, if I'm going to trust two guys to figure out how to trade for a Russell Wilson or trade for a Derek Carr or trade for a Deshaun Watson and still be able to keep Chris Godwin, I trust Jason Light and John Spytek to figure those things out. That's why they get paid the big bucks, and they've done incredibly well in that situation. But a lot of questions surrounding this team. Is Chris Godwin going to be a Buccaneer? Is he going to go somewhere else? Who is the quarterback going to be? Because there are some sites out there and some Twitter accounts saying that Kyler Murray, the Buccaneers are the favorite outside of Arizona for him to be suiting up for in week 1 next year. Plenty of abilities to place some bets on that. And of course, if you do so, we recommend heading over to BetOnline, because BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the playoffs right up to the big game this weekend. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, along with real-time live updates of current games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline, where the game starts. Segment 2 here of the Locked On Bucs podcast. We thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen every day. It is Super Week, brought to you by Get Upside, and there's no better place to get coverage of that big game than the Locked On NFL podcast. Locked On NFL, Locked On Bengals, Locked On Rams, all of them in LA right now covering the big game. They've already nabbed some really incredible guests out there. I've seen some clips of what they've been doing on Radio Row. You got to check those shows out. They're doing a great job out there in Los Angeles. And if Godwin didn't go down, Evan, we would probably be out there right now.
We'd be yucking it up on Radio Row. You're right.
I would not be dealing with still having like 6 inches of snow out on the ground outside.
And us dealing with 55 and rainy. It's cold and breezy here. It's not pretty.
That's shorts weather, Evan.
I know, it's so funny how basic we can be down here.
All right. Well, we've talked about your thoughts on Chris Godwin, but let's talk about a couple of things surrounding Godwin. If Chris Godwin leaves, if he stays, wide receiver should still be a position that the Buccaneers look at either way. It just depends on the level of wide receiver, right? Because we were kind of fooled heading into the season about the depth at wide receiver. And I realized there were injury issues and strip teases and dancing off the field by Antonio Brown. There was injury to Scotty Miller. Tyler Johnson shows up, out of shape, overweight, never really kind of got his feet under him. Then just constant injuries, constant switching out. You bring in Brashad Perryman, you bring in John Brown, you have Cyril Grayson go off a couple weeks, then he gets hurt. It was a mess. So no matter what, wide receiver needs to be a position that the Buccaneers look at. So let's start with the bad news. Okay, in this hypothetical world, the bad news is Chris Godwin has signed a ridiculous, $250 million contract to go be the number 1 wide receiver of the Jacksonville Jaguars, because it would take $250 million for any sane human to want to play there. What free agent wide receiver would you want to see the Buccaneers pursue to replace Godwin? Now, on yesterday's episode, I brought up Allen Robinson, one of my favorite receivers, who's just gotten a bad draw at the quarterback position. David went discount shopping, but made a lot of sense in his arguments about kind of the resurgence of a healthy AJ Green in the 2021 season. So what are your thoughts real quick, on Allen Robinson and AJ Green? And then which free agent would you put number 1 on your list?
Yeah, so if I go to Spot Track right now, that does a tremendous job with contracts. Chris Godwin, they project to make about $18 million per year. Allen Robinson in that scenario would make about $16.3 million per year. So
AJ Green down at $7 million.
Yeah, and my assumption in saying that is, if you're not getting I don't know how you don't get Godwin and then you land Allen Robinson. Like, how were you guys like that close to not make it work? So, while I'm a fan of Allen Robinson, and if he can be a little bit cheaper, maybe on a 1-year deal, hey, launch into the next big contract. I would like it. I just don't know how realistic Allen Robinson is for this scenario and how it's built. But I like Allen Robinson. I think AJ Green is a really good person to bring up, a veteran, somebody who finally had a healthy year. You kind of were reminded a little bit of what he could do. Funny enough, the guy toiled away there in Cincinnati, carrying the squad for so long. And then the 1 year he leaves, they make it to the Super Bowl. So I feel bad. It's like DeMar DeRozan with the Raptors. Just the 1 year you're gone, boom, they make it happen. So
Gio Bernard.
Yeah, Gio Bernard too. But he didn't have the load that AJ carried. But nonetheless, I think that AJ Green's a really good name to look at. And he's a guy that can look at Tampa Bay and say, these are a group of winners. I want to be a part of this organization, sign a 1-year deal and let it rip. So I think that's a really good call on AJ Green and Allen Robinson, who I like from a tape perspective and playing in Chicago with a bunch of nothing around him. I like him on paper. I just think that if Chris Godwin did make that work before having Allen Robinson. Having said that, I think that there's a couple of options that I would be looking at who fit into that type of Chris Godwin role that I'm looking at for those grimy catches. One, what's going on with JuJu Smith-Schuster? I'm very interested to see if you can snag him for what can maybe be a high risk, high reward type contract. He's certainly fallen off injuries, but if he can kind of have this resurgence in his next contract with the Buccaneers, you get him for like 3-4 years, you might have just extracted a tremendous value for a young wideout. Don't know necessarily what his market is out there, but I think he would slide in perfectly to that Godwin role. And ideally you wouldn't miss too much of what Godwin brings to the table because he has that type of ceiling. Another guy, if Bruce Arians is looking for a veteran type, I think is an Emmanuel Sanders. A guy that definitely has, with Bruce, I think he likes guys who have been there, have done that. You don't really need to nurse them so much and get them caught up to speed. Hey, we're a veteran group. We've won a Super Bowl here. We're throwing you the playbook. Let's ride. A guy like Gio Bernard was something like that. Let's get a veteran in here. He's going to digest the playbook, be a good team player, and throw him into a role, and we don't have to worry about him. So those are two guys that I think salary-wise can work, can allow you to kind of focus on some other guys if Godwin doesn't work out. And I like the talent that they bring to the table, and I think that while they're not Chris Godwin, I think that they help and can have the potential for 800, 900-yard seasons.
JuJu was a name that I put on my list that I was going to bring up. Didn't get around to it. I did bring up Odell Beckham Jr., Spot Track, that same market value tool that they use. He's listed at $13 million. So that's a pretty significant savings over what they're projecting Chris Godwin to get. And from what we've heard, Odell Beckham Jr., the media reports of what kind of teammate he is and all that are pretty much not true from Rams players that have talked about their experience with him compared to what they expected. But let's talk. I
just think someone's gonna have to overpay for OBJ. That's my only thing, because he's name value. He provides this aura about him, and he might go a little bit more than what the Spot Track is saying, because that's just pumping out a number, black and white, not viewing subjectivity.
Right. Let's talk about some good news in this hypothetical world. Let's say Chris Godwin does come back. The Buccaneers still have a need at the wide receiver position. They need that number 3 guy that they can bring in and help Godwin and help Evans, be able to do their jobs and still be a threat out there on the field. Now, I brought up Laquan Treadwell and some of the similarities that he had with Brashad Perryman, some really kind of eerie similarities and parallels between the two throughout the early parts of their career. And then David brought up a guy in DeAndre Carter, who not only would help at the wide receiver position, but would offer some major competition with Jalen Darden as the return guy. So kind of a dual threat there that can help on the offensive side of the ball. And if Jalen Darden can't stay on his feet, then you have a reliable returner. Who are you looking at out of this free agent pool to come in and be that number 3 guy for the Bucs next season that could, is an affordable name, but also someone that's going to provide some production?
So I like the pair of the names. Treadwell, I'm not as stoked about. He just right guy at Ole Miss. He never really lived up to the hype. First off, I think Brashad Perriman would be a name. Just bring a guy back that and trust and has shown flashes. So I think he is an option that will be seriously considered. Also, I like Josh Reynolds. I thought this year he bounced between, I think, the Lions and the Titans. The year before, he had a really good year with the Rams. And my thing with Josh Reynolds was that he was always log jammed in Los Angeles. He never really had a major role, but he did that role well. And if you're looking for a guy who can get maybe 650, 700 yards from that wide receiver 3 role, that seems really productive when you got Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, who are going to eat up a lot of targets and a lot of yards. That is a name who I think you can get on the cheap. He has great size, and I think he would fit really well into what the Buccaneers want. But I tend to believe if Godwin does come back, you're going to look at a lot of very minimalistic options. Perriman, Tyler Johnson, as much as we're all skeptics, in the draft. And I think that in the draft, then, I think that no matter what, wide receiver is going to be a priority in this year's draft. I think there are some really good names in this draft. I don't know if it has the star power that we've seen in previous drafts, but I think it's deep, and I think you can get someone pretty good to fulfill that role, especially for what the Bucs are needing if Godwin is back. So if Godwin's not, you probably want to try to figure out a way to get Dotson out of Penn State, because that seems like that's where he'll fall in, or Chris Olave. If Godwin does come back, then all right, let me move on down to the 3rd or 4th round. Then you're just kind of, we can go through a ton of options, and we get, when we get closer to the draft, we can kind of pick up on a lot of names, because that really opens up the floodgates, especially with what just happened at the Senior Bowl. So everything's kind of moving around. But like the kid out of NDSU, North Dakota State, that was someone that I know had a big week. So that's what I think might happen. I think the draft will have some name to focus. You bring up Darden, not 100% sure what his role is going to be on this team, if he even makes the team. Right. Tyler Johnson's the same thing. Nothing's guaranteed to him either. So it's really intriguing, but as we learned this year, they are not as deep as they thought and we thought entering the season at wide receiver. That evaporated quickly.
Yeah, give me the Evans, Godwin, Olave trio all day. That would be, and obviously my feelings on Ohio State. So me saying that, just say. But I'm not giving up hope on Chris Godwin's return the way I have completely given up on any and all of my New Year's resolution. However, I am sticking to my resolution to try to eat a little bit healthier, and I thank Built Bar for helping me out with that. All Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, low calorie, high protein. You can replace your candy bars with Built Bars. They are better. A typical candy bar can be anywhere from 200 to 300 calories. Built Bars, 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, 17 grams of protein, plenty of flavors to choose from: mint brownie, coconut almond, and new for this month, white chocolate cookies and cream. Oh yeah. They're all delicious. And new flavors are coming out all the time. If they think a flavor might be good, they're going to make it and they're going to find out. And it'll be a delicious way to find out what your favorite flavor is at Built Bar. They are all about taste. They make it taste delicious first, then they figure out how to make it healthy. A little reverse engineering there. I don't know how they do it, but they do it, and they do it better than anybody else. So go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15. You're going to get 15% off your order. Again, promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Bucs fans, of course, I am going to talk to you about an incredible app that everyone who buys gas needs to know about. And I'm talking about our title sponsor today, Get Upside. Our listeners are earning cash back for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. You just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now. Use promo code TOUCHDOWN. You're going to get 25 cents off per gallon or more on your first fill up. Cash back right back into your account. You don't have to pay full price at the pump anymore. You get the cash using Get Upside. Just download the app for free. Promo code TOUCHDOWN. 25 cents per gallon or more on your first tank. Some people who drive a lot are making as much as $200 to $300 a year in cash back. There's no catch. The cash back gets added to your account. You can cash out anytime to your bank account, your PayPal account. You can redeem it for e-gift cards for Amazon and other brands. Super, super easy. Just download the free Get Upside app, promo code TOUCHDOWN to get 25 cents per gallon or more cash back on your first tank. That's promo code TOUCHDOWN. Wrapping things up here on a WTSP Wednesday edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast. James Yarko, Evan Closky on Twitter at @JYarko_Bucs, at @eClosky. WTSP. Time to transition into the tight end conversation, right? Rob Gronkowski's out here doing interviews, talking about how he wants to play with Joe Burrow in the Cincinnati Bengals. So that's not, great to hear. But two key tight ends for the Buccaneers about to become free agents, Rob Gronkowski being one, OJ Howard being the other. So we're going to start off the tight end conversation before David dives a little bit more into it tomorrow by asking you, Evan, what are your thoughts on the potential returns of Gronk and OJ Howard? Are they both returning? Is one of them returning? If so, which one? Are both of them gone? I personally lean more towards it's more likely that Gronk comes back. He had expressed interest in continuing to play with the team even after Brady retired, whenever that would be. Also said, like 2 days later, if he had to decide right now, he would just retire. I think he enjoys playing in Tampa. I think he enjoys the weather. I think he enjoys his teammates and the coaching staff. So I think there's a chance he comes back. But I think that one is far more predicated on who the quarterback is rather than Chris Godwin's decision will be. But what are your thoughts on the pending free agent tight ends for the Bucs?
OJ Howard seems like for sure gone. Yeah. So then it comes down to Gronkowski, and I tend to believe that Gronkowski's gone too. It all depends on who the Bucs bring in as their quarterback. Mm-hmm. But Gronk came out of retirement for Tom Brady. He's never played with anybody else other than Tom Brady. I don't know how much he really wants to play without Tom Brady. Obviously, he still has stuff left in the tank. We saw that. He suffered another injury this season, a long-term one that took him out half the year. If he's going to come back, the thing would be the narrative I want to do 1 year without Tom and see how it goes. Right. But he's got to also go to a contender, and there might be another spot where, it's a deadlier situation. But it's also got to be a spot that I think, his family is girlfriend, fiance, I forget it. He's not married yet, right?
I think it's his fiance.
But somewhere they would both want to live. I don't think he's gonna head up to Green Bay for the year and say I want to play football in Green Bay just because I want to chase a championship. Like, he's done that. If he can have fun and play football at the same time, he'll do it. But he's got to also pursue a championship at the same time as well.
He did have conversations with the Buffalo Bills last offseason. Yeah, that's his home team.
Now that's a different
That's
situation.
championship.
I think that the Bills would be a great situation, but they have Dawson Knox. I don't know how much they need him, but that would be something where he would make it work only because he grew up in that area, and that
Right.
would be just something that he gets off the bucket list. And obviously, they're one of the best teams in the NFL as well. So it would be just sort of a great way to kind of leave on his terms. I got to do something for me. It was me and Tom. This year is just going to be for me, and that's how I'm going to go out. But I tend to believe that once Brady bowed out, I believe that was the end of Gronk coming back too. But we'll see. Again, I just don't know. I just don't know how much he wants to come back. Period. He's a tough read. He's a really tough read because he kind of laughs it off, and he says one thing, he'll then joke about it the other, say something completely different in another interview. So I have no idea. I have none. He's one of the tougher reads that I have entering this offseason, to be honest.
Yeah, well, and he said that no matter what, he was just going to go year to year for the rest of the time that he wants to play, so he doesn't get locked into anything. So I don't know. Between he and OJ Howard, I think there's probably a better chance that Gronk returns than OJ Howard returns. But like I said, that one is predicated more, I think, on the quarterback position than any other. I think it's more likely that he returns to play with a Russell Wilson or a Deshaun Watson or someone like that rather than a Kyle Trask or a Blaine Gabbert. All due respect to those guys. Gronk's not around to just play. He wants to go chase another championship, and he's going to do so on his terms. But with that, Evan, I think we're going to get out of here. Real rapid fire scale of 1 to 10. 10 slam dunk, 1. It's just straight up not happening, like the Detroit Lions ever winning a Super Bowl. Chris Godwin returns, Gronk returns, OJ Howard returns. How are you grading each one?
All right, so Godwin returns, I'll say a 7.
Love it.
Gronk returning, I'll say a 3 to a 4.
Okay.
Probably lean more 3 than 4, but somewhere there, a little below average. OJ Howard, 1 to 2. The only way I say that OJ comes back is if Gronk doesn't come back and then the team gets him back for like a 1-year deal pretty cheap and says, hey, you're the guy again. I just don't think that it worked out. And I think OJ is just going to want to do it. Like, he's just going to, I got to get out of this situation. It didn't work here. Let me leave. So 1 to a 2 on OJ. Let me say that.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you across the board. I was thinking of 4 for Gronk and pretty much a 1 for OJ. So Evan, appreciate you coming on, talking wide receivers, helping us transition over to tight ends. We'll WTSP Wednesday next week. We're going to start diving into the trenches on both sides of the ball. So exciting stuff there. And of course, you can check out everything Evan is doing on 10 Tampa Bay and at 10tampabay.com. You can check out everything I'm doing over at bucksnation.com. But we want to thank all of you for making today's episode of Locked On Bucs your first listen or first watch of the day. Now make your second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It is free and available on all platforms. Follow along on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarko_Bucs, at DHarrison82, at Closky WTSP, and at Bucs_Nation. We hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, wash your hands, be good to one another, fire those cannons. We thank you so much for joining us right here at Locked On Bucs.